I've been playing Mega Man 11 for a couple weeks now, and I gotta say it is an amazing game. I'd even go farther and say that it's the best Mega Man game in the classic series. Now, there's a few reasons why I think that's the case. The first being that I think Mega Man 11 has the best set of weapons we've ever seen in a single game. The sheer power and utility these moves have makes the game very dynamic and fast-paced. This is not something necessarily intrinsic to Mega Man games. Have you played the first Mega Man game on NES? And if so, do you remember Gutsman's weapon Super Arm? It was an attack that you could only use when there were special blocks spaced on the stage. Throwing those blocks definitely could take out enemies for sure, but the real problem was that more times than not there were no blocks to throw at your enemies. So this power was pretty useless most of the time. Now, compare that to Mega Man 11's Block Dropper. This attack is easily one of the most powerful weapons in the new game. It summons 4 blocks high in the air ahead of Mega Man that fall down and are unobstructed by terrain. The 4 blocks being so close together makes it easy to aim and good for taking out multiple foes at once. Also, due to Block Dropper's weapon trajectory, it is also useful for hitting enemies on the other side of an enemy shield. And if that wasn't enough, you can use the power gear to multiply the number of blocks dropped and destroy some of the mini bosses in no time flat. Flame Blast is such a strong weapon in Mega Man 6. The projectile shoots slightly forward and then arcs downward. When the fireball hits the ground, a pillar of fire erupts and deals damage to anything silly enough to wander into it. But what makes this attack so good is the sheer damage. It one-shots most enemies in the game, and it usually only takes an additional 1 or 2 hits to take out healthier robots. Also, the decent ammo count on this weapon makes it a decent swap over the regular Mega Buster now and then. Oh, and did I mention it can melt ice? There's a couple items you can only pick up by using the fire that way. Blazing Torch feels similar to Flame Blast in that it also deals significant damage to most enemies, but the move is very different. To start off, the projectile itself is much larger than Flame Blast, making it easier to land on enemies. Secondly, this attack lifts up into the air before falling back down. This makes Blazing Torch a handy weapon for dealing with flying enemies, or those on higher elevation than Mega Man. The firing arc also gives the attack decent horizontal range, helping Mega to keep his distance from his foes. Lastly, this weapon passes through terrain and the defenses of many enemies, making it a weapon useful in more situations than not. Unlike Flame Blast, Blazing Torch doesn't melt any ice, but it can be used to detonate explosive boxes, creating new paths, or making certain challenges easier for Mega Man. Oh, and I forgot to mention that when using the power gear, Mega Man shoots a giant fireball that shoots fire in 3 different directions, covering lots of space and dealing extra damage. Mega Man 10's weapons generally have some interesting uses if you look around for them, but if there's one attack that's a chore to use, it would have to be Thunderwall. The attack summons a small cloud that lifts up into the air and shoots down lightning. You can fire 2 of these things out, and the lightning bolt itself deals strong damage. Despite the massive vertical area this attack covers, it's actually a pretty weak attack. If enemies are above Mega Man, there's a good chance they'll get hit by the cloud instead, which deals very little damage. Both the cloud and the lightning can be obstructed by terrain, making it very weak in a lot of areas. The high cost of this weapon, tied to its extremely situational use, makes it a weapon you wouldn't really use except for its relegated boss fights. Thunderstorm has the same high cost that Thunderwall has, but it's far more versatile. This attack hits both below and above Mega Man instantly, passes through terrain, and pierces through enemy guards. The best thing about this weapon is that with power gear active, Its secondaries is a screen wipe, like Mega Man 4's Rain Flush. The attack itself actually deals decent damage, allowing you to one-hit most common enemies. The damage is also pretty high on certain mini-bosses, helping you to take them out quickly. Oh, and let me not forget to mention, it can also freeze the firewall in Torchman stage. No need to be in a rush when you can just chill out. Drill Bomb in Mega Man 4 isn't too bad a weapon. It deals massive amounts of damage to most enemies, knocking them out usually in 1 or 2 hits. The downsides of this weapon are more in its secondary functionality. You can press the shoot button a second time to cause the bomb to explode, but the projectile itself travels so fast it is difficult to use this in a strategic way. Partially, the problem is the smaller screen space in the older games, and thus there isn't a lot of time to decide when to blow up the drill bomb. The weapon does not go through guards, and some enemies that lose to the regular Mega Buster are immune to the drill bomb. Chain Blast in Mega Man 11 is a very interesting weapon. You can shoot out one and travel alongside it, choosing to detonate it whenever you would like. Unlike Drill Bomb, you can actually have 4 of these flying at once. If they are close enough to each other, they combine for a massive explosion, with overwhelming damage. If you find placing all 4 bombs difficult, you can just use the power gear to shoot one giant bomb instead. These explosions can defeat enemies that would normally be invulnerable. And a little nifty thing about Chain Blast is that it extends your jump just slightly. So if there's a jump you're having trouble with, you can use Chain Blast to move just a little bit further. I would say all the weapons in Mega Man 8 are decent. They all have uses somewhere, even if most of them are overshadowed by Astro Crush or Flash Bomb. Ice Wave has its uses. The move shoots a small icicle that hits the ground and summons a flow of ice that travels across the floor, up walls, and through enemies. This is very useful for taking out enemies standing in a row or waiting at different levels of elevation. Ice Wave is a bit weak against flying enemies, which is a shame seeing as the flying Tengu Man is weak to the move. Scramble Thunder has the same propensity for traveling across the floor and climbing walls, but it does not normally pass through enemies. Instead, when the attack makes contact with an enemy, it stops there and expands into a bigger electric field. The electric field doesn't deal additional damage to the foe it originally made contact with, but will deal damage to any other enemy that wanders into it. However, if you use the power gear, the Scramble Thunder fully expands as soon as it touches the ground and will not stop when it bumps into an enemy, allowing it to deal better damage to more spread out enemies. As cool as these differences are, I think the real utility Scramble Thunder has over Ice Wave is the fact that you can shoot it upwards. If an enemy is flying above Mega Man, he can still defend himself by holding up before using the Scramble Thunder. Oh, and it also extends Mega Man's jumps for those tricky situations. Rebound Striker is one of the better weapons in Mega Man 10. By default, it deals twice the damage of a normal Mega Buster shot, but the damage increases each time the ball rebounds off of any surface. This weapon can also be shot at an upwards or downwards angle, giving you more options to set up a powerful rebound. The main drawbacks to this weapon is that you only get 14 shots, and only 2 can be on screen at a time. The low ammo count doesn't make it very strong as a stand-in for the Mega Buster, but the angles you can shoot it do help to defeat enemies in the air or at different elevations. Personally, I feel the bounce balls are better in every way. It angles the same, but one bounce ball only deals 1 damage. This damage does not increase as they rebound off walls, so it sounds worse, but this weapon has twice the ammo and each individual shot produces 3 bounce balls. On higher health enemies, you can shoot all 3 of those bounce balls into the enemy to instantaneously deal 3 damage. Unlike the Rebound Striker, bounce balls do not get destroyed when they come into contact with an enemy. Instead, they bounce off. This allows the same ball you shot earlier to deal additional damage to an enemy. You normally can have up to 6 balls on screen at a time, but when using the power gear, Mega Man shoots an additional 3 bounce balls behind himself, and the new balls on screen limit is 12. Due to these properties, the bounce ball is a strong weapon that doesn't depend on walls or carefully aiming to apply its damage. Charge Kick is a weird weapon in Mega Man 5. It's not something you execute with the fire button, but instead by sliding. Because of this, the attack can only be used on the ground and is thus pretty useless against aerial enemies or enemies simply sitting at a higher elevation. Charge Kick does grant invincibility, allowing you to go through projectiles, environmental hazards, and large enemies without taking contact damage. It doesn't allow you to go through Wave Man's water attack though. It'll knock you out of your Charge Kick, and not many things do that. Simply due to how the terrain is formed, I find it very difficult to make strong use of Charge Kick. Now, Pile Driver is a pretty cool weapon in my opinion. This is the attack you'll be using when you want to progress through levels quickly, so I think you will get more use out of it on future replays than on your first go through. That aside, the attack is still a very powerful move that can destroy stronger enemies and help you to get across large gaps. The fact that you can use this in the air and go through projectiles and weaker enemies makes it a very powerful option when platforming and foes are trying to stand in your way. The Joule Satellite in Mega Man 9 has infinite time duration and 7 uses. The shield stays on you until it bumps into a higher health enemy or you choose to shoot it off. The shield also reflects projectiles that come into contact with it. Due to the lack of stronger enemies, it's practically free to do Plug Man and Galaxy Man stages damageless with Joule Satellite. It has useful sections in almost every other stage, excluding Splash Woman stage, where the sea mine-like enemy Oku Sutoban is immune to it, and the Octone robot's armor repels it. At first glance, Acid Barrier seems a lot weaker than Joule Satellite. Acid Barrier does not deal contact damage to enemies you walk into. It only blocks projectiles. However, it does replace Mega Man's Mega Buster with a new Acid Shot. This new Acid Shot shoots at a higher trajectory, which allows Mega Man to hit some enemies he couldn't normally. It also arcs downwards, allowing to shoot down onto enemies at lower elevations. These properties allow Mega Man to take out stronger enemies. Still, I don't think this is enough to truly compare to the strength of Joule Satellite in its good areas. What really pushes Acid Barrier is its Power Gear form. This stronger version deals 5 damage multiple times while in contact with an enemy. When the shield defeats an enemy or blocks projectiles, the Acid Barrier hurls out like 3 chunks of acid in the direction of the collision. Also, the Acid Shot deals double damage while in this form. So yeah, as you can see, the Acid Barrier can be extremely strong and completely invalidate the challenges in certain areas. Alright, that sums up why I think Mega Man 11 has the best weapon set in any classic Mega Man game. But hey, what do you guys think? Is there another Mega Man game with a weapon set that you believe is actually stronger than 11's? If so, let me know in the comments below. If you found this video entertaining or informative, please hit that like button, it helps out a lot. I'm planning on making quite a few videos on Mega Man 11. Hope to see you guys in the next one.